What happens when money, food, and promises are sent across oceans to help Africa, but decades later, the same problems remain? To understand where Africa is today, we must look back at how foreign aid began, why it grew, and what it has really meant for the continent. Welcome back to AfriFacts. Today, we reflect on the long history of foreign aid in Africa, a story that began with hope, was shaped by global politics, and continues to affect how millions of Africans live today. Foreign aid didn't just appear overnight. It was born out of war, shaped by rivalry, and fueled by promises of development. But looking back, the question remains, has aid truly helped Africa grow, or has it left the continent trapped in dependency? The birth of aid. Modern foreign aid was born in the aftermath of World War II. Europe lay in ruins, and the United States launched the Marshall Plan to rebuild it. The plan worked. Western Europe rose quickly from the ashes of war. Inspired by this success, global leaders believed aid could do the same for developing nations. When African countries began gaining independence in the 1950s and 1960s, aid became a central part of the conversation. Donors saw it as a way to help new nations stand on their feet, build schools, roads, and hospitals. To many, aid symbolized partnership and solidarity with Africa's fresh start. The Cold War era, 1960s, 1980s. But aid was never just about generosity. During the Cold War, Africa became a battleground for influence. The West and the Soviet Union both poured money into African countries, not purely to reduce poverty, but to gain allies. A leader's ideology often determined where their country received aid. Pro-Western governments were showered with support from the US and Europe. Pro-Soviet states received funds, weapons, and advisors from Moscow. For ordinary Africans, this meant aid often came with strings attached. Politics decided who got what and why. Instead of being a neutral tool for growth, aid became a weapon in global rivalries, leaving Africa caught between competing powers. The debt era, 1980s, 1990s. As the Cold War cooled down, Africa entered the era of loans and debt. Aid increasingly came in the form of credit, not grants. Countries borrowed heavily to finance projects, but when global oil prices spiked and economies struggled, repayments became impossible. The result? By the 1980s, many African nations were drowning in debt. To qualify for more aid, they had to accept conditions from international lenders. These often meant cutting social programs, privatizing services, and slashing subsidies, policies that hurt the poor most. What was once presented as help often left Africa chained to new forms of economic control. The 2000s and the age of campaigns. By the early 2000s, a new wave of aid arrived, this time fueled by massive global campaigns. Celebrities, concerts, and international NGOs called for debt cancellation and more donations for Africa. The slogan was simple: make poverty history. Billions more flowed in, especially into health programs, food relief, and education. Yet, even with all this attention, Africa's deep structural problems, weak industries, poor governance, lack of infrastructure, remained unsolved. Aid was treating symptoms, not causes. Looking back at this history, foreign aid has been many things: a symbol of hope, a tool of rivalry, a chain of debt, and a source of relief during crises. But it has also created dependency, where nations survive not on their own strength, but on outside support. This history forces us to ask hard questions. Did aid empower African nations, or did it strip them of self-reliance? Was it truly about development, or was it about global interests dressed as charity? As Africa continues to rise in the 21st century, the lessons of this history matter more than ever. Understanding where aid came from helps us see where Africa must go next. If you found this reflection thought-provoking, give this video a like, share it with others, and subscribe to AfriFacts for more deep dives into Africa's past, present, and future. Because to know where Africa is going, we must first understand where it has been.